Welcome to the Thought Leaders Business Lab, Susana. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited too.
We're going to talk about how to create an influencer marketing strategy to sell online courses. And I think this is such an awesome topic, purely because I personally didn't even think of influencer marketing to sell online courses. So I'm super excited to deep dive into this with you. Before we start, I'd love you to talk about the kinds of people that you work with and what exactly you help them with.
So my company, Digital Everything Consulting, actually helps brands, mostly startups, with their marketing strategy, their social media marketing strategy, their digital marketing strategy, plus their influencer marketing strategy. And lately, because everybody's doing influencer marketing, I've been really concentrating on that. A lot of the brands that I work with are A to B round startups. And a lot of them I actually end up working with 2 or 3 times, because sometimes the CEO or the GM moves to another company and then they hire me again. So I usually look at their brand in a holistic way and help them figure out who their target audiences are, whether or not they are reaching out to the right people, whether or not their content looks right for the right people, and their ads, and then sort of just holistically make sure that their marketing is cohesive.
That's so awesome. How did you get into this? Because influencer marketing hasn't been around for that long in the form that it is now. I mean, it has been around forever in different ways, but you know, it certainly is the flavor of the month, and I don't see it going anywhere soon. I'd love you to share the transition or how you even got into this.
So in 2000, I started working as business development manager at a startup. And I always loved everything that had to do with the internet. And I had an eBay store where I sold vintage clothing, designer clothing and bags and shoes and things like that. I became a power seller, and I just loved the internet. So that was just a little hobby where I became a power seller, and I was working as a development person in a startup. And then I ended up working in sales and marketing. And then I discovered that I love social media because I love the internet. So then my business slowly morphed into social media marketing. And I also had a fashion blog on the side that I started in 2007, where I started getting a lot of traction, because in those days, a blog, not that many people had blogs. And if you had a certain point of view, you had followers. So I started getting invited to like New York City to go with 20 other bloggers to check out the new Dior lipstick launch in the Condé Nast building. Or I got invited by a brand to do a photo shoot and pick my favorite fashion items and then shoot it. And then they put me on their site, and they flew me to New York for that. So I started seeing that other side of the business, and I thought, wait, there's another side of this business. So I had a consulting business where I was just doing social media marketing for a lot of startup brands. And then I started offering them influencer marketing and telling them that I can help them with brands. And then in 2012, I actually ended up working with Guess. They were sort of trying to revamp their whole marketing strategy online and things like that. So they tried our company out, a small company, and we said, you know, we can help you with a new campaign that works with influencers. And it was so new back then in 2012, and they said, sure. So we did this campaign called the Color Me campaign. We picked 4 influencers that were sort of up and coming. And they each chose a jean color that they liked, and they wore it. And then we put them on a Pinterest board and had them pin all their favorite things in that same color family. And then they drove their followers there. We ran a giveaway, and then you drove people to the site, drove people to the stores, and then had their followers pin the boards as well. And it actually went viral, and Mashable wrote about it, and then it ended up on Yahoo. And it was really great. So that was one of those things. And then in 2011, I was written up as a social media pioneer. And then the story just keeps going on. I kept working with startups, and that's just kind of how it went.
That's so awesome. I love that you've just gone out and done a whole heap of different things and just jumped right in. And I think that is a theme that I see with successful people, is they don't just dip their toe in the water and see if something works. It's like they jump all in and completely, it's either going to work or it's not. And I think that's definitely a theme that I see across the board. So that's so cool. Now, I believe that there's 6 steps that you've got in your marketing strategy. So what it would be great, actually, before we even go into that, who does this work for? Influencer marketing for online courses. That probably a better place to start.
Who does this work for? It works for any company that thinks that they can create an online course. So, for example, if you have a company that, let me give you an example. Like, say you have, even if you have a law firm, if you have a law firm that teaches employment law to their clients, and they have a lot of big clients, right? And usually a lawyer would have to like drive their car and go to Orange County, which is an hour away, and then sit in front of a conference room and talk to 20 people and teach them for the whole day for 8 hours. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. Literally, a lawyer can create this course, schedules, and then send it to their client and charge their client whatever X amount, like, the price of the course, or for each seat, however they want to do it. I've seen it where you can just charge for each seat, and the lawyer doesn't have to travel anymore. The employees don't have to take up their whole day doing that. They can do other things. They can just do it when they want. And so that's like one profession that can do that. So anything that it's trainable that you can create into a system. And I think that no matter what you do, there is usually a system for everything that people do. So you can create an online course for anything as long as you create a system out of it.
Totally. And I agree with you. There's lots of people that say, an online course wouldn't work for me. And within 30 seconds, I'm like, what about, XYZ or ABC? And they're like, I didn't even think of that. So it really is about thinking, what is something that you say more than 3 times every week? That is an online course right there. Because why say it 3 times when you can say it once and just keep rolling it out?
Totally.
Absolutely. So I'd love you to take us through these 6 stages, or these 6 steps that you have to help us figure out what this marketing strategy or influencer marketing strategy looks like, and what we need to do as online course creators to be able to use this strategy.
So, I mean, the steps that are really, it's all the same steps for anything you do. I think when you approach influencer marketing, and there is a system. Number 1 is you should identify who your core audience is for this course. Who are you selling it to? Who is your target? And if you have 2 or 3 targets, you can decide, do you want to work with one type of influencer, or do you want to work with 3 types of influencers? Usually what I suggest is, if you can work with 3 types of influencers, then you have all their audience sort of pushing the message out the way you want them to. So let's say you have a course about, let me think, if you have a course about how to start a sneaker company, something arbitrary like that, right? So, okay. So then you're thinking, okay, sneaker company, how to start a sneaker company. You can literally market to an influencer who loves sneakers. You can have the influencer help you with so the influencer who likes sneakers talks about sneakers all the time. You can have somebody who writes about just starting businesses and things like that. That's one type of influencer for you. And then you can have just a beginning novice who is bootstrapping, starting a company or something like that. That's another type of influencer. Just so those are 3 target types of people that you're looking at. And then once you've figured out who your target is, then you reach out to those groups of influencers, and you let them know what you're trying to do and see who's interested. So really, number 1 is figuring out who your target audience is, because that's very, very important. And then number 2, finding them. Now, finding them, there was a benchmark report that just came out recently where they gathered information from like 2016 to 2018 about influencer marketing. And one of the most time-consuming things to do is actually look and find and engage with influencers. That's very time consuming. So one of the things that I really like to do, I mean, there are platforms out there we could do searches, but that's a little tricky, because some of the influencers that maybe are more popular, or the ones you want to work with, or are working constantly, might not be on these platforms. So that's one thing to think about when you get on these platforms. I always just search hashtags. So that's the second thing to do. Search a hashtag that's popular in your niche, or that is for your target audience, right? So you're talking about sneakers, and you're talking about business owners or starting a business. So search those types of hashtags and see what comes up.
Mhm.
And then from there, see who's tagging those, and then sort of drill down and find the influencers that you want to work with and make that list. So create a list. That is really important. The third thing to do is after you've searched your hashtags, make a list and get organized. And you want to rank them.
Cool. So there there are influencers that are more prolific, or that are really take ownership of a platform. So for example, a business might use Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, let's say, and one of the influencers might be, your sneaker blogger might really be owning the Instagram market. So as well as getting the 3 different influencers, you'd need to also find the influencers across those platforms, right?
Yes, and you really need to decide where you think your brand is going to resonate the most. So if you're doing a product that's really B2B, you want to make sure you're on LinkedIn and probably Facebook. I mean, no matter what, I think a brand needs to be on Facebook. There's 2.3 billion people on Facebook, so somebody's on there,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely the place to go. But if you're B2B, you hit LinkedIn. If you're B2C, make sure you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, and maybe Twitter. Twitter's more B2B in my opinion. So, you just have to decide where they are going to be and where you think your brand resonates. And then when you're choosing those influencers, search on every platform what those hashtags are that you're looking at and see who comes up, and then start ranking them, meaning who are their followers, how many followers they have. You can look it up in different tools, Alexa and SEMrush, look at their traffic, look at where their traffic's coming from, find out who is actually following them, find out what their comments are and what they're actually talking about, and if they're actually the right fit for you, and then sort of rank them on a sheet, which I've created a template for over time of some of the most important things that you should be ranking them for, and then make a decision to who you're going to go out to. So that's really important.
Cool. So you talk about ranking them. Once we've found the platform, we've done the keyword search, we've found these influencers. Are you ranking them purely on the number of followers, or is there something else that we need to take into consideration when we're ranking them?
I think when you're ranking them, you really need to decide what your budget is, and also engagement rate. Those are 2 really important things. So if they have a lot of followers, like I'm talking over 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers, usually they get paid for every single thing they do. Yeah. And so you need to make sure you have a budget. If you don't have a budget and you just have $0, you want to give away free product, start small, start with the nano influencers, and you'll get more bang for your buck. They'll want to do more for you because they're trying to establish themselves too, and they want to establish a relationship with you, as well as somebody who's that passionate and they have a small following like that. Usually they have some very engaged followers. The engagement rate could be as high as like 10% on some of these people. And that is actually better than getting somebody who has 200,000 followers who has like a 2% engagement rate. And what I found is usually the engagement rate falls as the numbers get bigger because more people are just following them to follow them, and they're not checking in with them all the time. So there is sort of a secret, it's not exactly science, it's more art on figuring out who they are, but read their posts, see if they resonate with your brand, make sure that they're actually talking about the things that you care about. Maybe you care about another thing. Maybe your sneaker company also cares about giving back. Is there something that this person is passionate about? You get to learn the personality of these influencers by reading their posts, and maybe there's something that you really like about this person. They might have not a huge following, but they have a passionate following. Those are all things that you should look at and consider. So sometimes I've seen in campaigns, brands might work with a certain type, like they have 20,000, 30,000 followers, and there's a certain type, and then suddenly they have one that's just has very small following, but for whatever reason they're working with this person, and you can start seeing that they're very passionate and their followers are very passionate, and that actually goes a lot further. It carries the message a lot further, and sometimes it's just more successful for the campaign.
Totally. So what I'm hearing is that you need to be really, really aware of what your values are, so that it's more than just the number that we're going after. It's really an alignment in values, so that it's more bang for your buck in that the followers of those people will really resonate in the message rather than just, here's this thing, it won't get as much traction.
I really believe that. And I think that that's the big change in influencer marketing right now. There's a big change because at first, I think people like out the gate, they said, you know, the numbers, and people are learning. I did a campaign recently for a client who is in the health and wellness space. And instead of purely going out to these fashionable or whoever's popular at the moment, you know, that's working a lot, and just going out to them, I actually went into niche groups. You know, I looked at like biohackers, and I looked at nutritionists and holistic nutritionists and paleo people and really passionate people, and then people over 40, and then pro athletes that are over 40 and retired athletes, and really looking at these different groups. And their followings aren't like in the millions or even in the 100,000s. They were more in the 30, 40,000, but these people had such passionate followers, and they were so passionate about what they were talking about. We ended up with so much earned media as a result that the ROI was much bigger than had you just gone on just what was popular or what is just pure numbers.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love this, thinking out of the box. So once we've identified this target market, we've ranked our influencers, we've created created the list, ranked the influencers. How do we then, do we reach out next? Is that what happens next?
So then it's important to figure out all your ducks in a row internally, which means, do you have a budget? And what is that budget? What's that number? And figure it out from the beginning. And then how much do you want to pay each of these people? And then create a strategy. Is your strategy to have all micro influencers? Is there a strategy to have one macro influencer and then the rest of the budget goes to micros, or some of them goes to nanos? Decide how many of each you want, and then on your ranking sheet, figure out who's top on your list and go out to them first. Because I don't recommend going out to everyone at once, because sometimes they all say yes, which is not often. It's pretty hard to get most influencers to sign on, but you know, it's harder than you think, actually. And so this is why this is the time consuming part. But I would say go after your top picks first, make sure they're on board, and then start working backwards. But budget and strategy.
Love it. So once we've got our budget and we understand our strategy, what do we have to do next?
Then you're going to basically do the dating game sort of thing. You're writing,
I love that.
You're writing emails, you know, and you're trying to get them to really want to work with you. Sometimes they're so busy, they just don't have time. So it doesn't matter what you're paying them. If they're good at what they do, they probably have on any given day 50 to 100 emails in their inbox. Wow. And if they get that many, they literally, some of them have assistants that just sift through. So you need a really catchy title that's going to catch them, and you need to make it not just about you. It has to be about them too. There has to be a reason why they want to do this campaign, because after all, at the end of the day, even though they are now making this an occupation, they started this because they're passionate about something. Yes. So never forget that, and don't insult them thinking that they just want to do it for the money, because if they don't like your product, or they don't think it resonates with their audience, or it just doesn't work, they're not going to do it. So it's really dating. Like, it really, your emails need to, in the subject line, help them figure out what you're doing. And then in the email, you sort of have to let them know, they know what their brand is about also, and how it resonates with your brand, and would you like to work together? I've seen emails where people are like, I'm going to pay you this, and this is what we need you to do. And they're like, whoa, I don't even know you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, let's not do this yet. Like, I need to know what your brand is about. Because like, if they do a little digging on you, let's just say there's some things going on with your company that they don't like, they're not going to do it anyways, you know, or, you know, there's just a lot of things.
Totally. And I know this because these influencers have built their tribe and their followers built on trust. So as a influencer marketing, you know, as you coming in, that influencer is transferring their trust onto you. And if they don't believe that you've got what it takes, or it doesn't align, that can actually hurt their brand big time. And I know that because I do a lot of collaborations, and it's taken me a long time to build the trust with the people that are in my world. I'm not about to hand that over to anyone. And it certainly is not about the money. Actually, it's never about the money. For me, it's about what value am I going to give to my audience, when these people come to me, not I want some money from you. So I think that's definitely something to pay attention to, that these people have built trust and they're not about to hand it away. So woo them, date them.
It's a dating game.
Yeah, totally. What else can you tell us about this? Once we've reached out, if someone says yes, what do we need to know from our side? Because you're saying our ducks need to be in a row. I mean, that totally makes sense to me. But can you deep dive a little bit more and explain what you mean about that?
So like, once they say they want to do this with you, make sure you have your budget in mind. Don't say, oh my God, you want to do this? Okay, let me go find out from my CMO how much I can pay you now. And then like leave them hanging for 2 weeks. They don't have time for this, right? So like what's your number, right? Make sure you have the number and make sure you know what you want them to do. So when you're already like engaged with them and they're like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Make sure you have it all aligned. Like, I want you to write a blog post. I want you to do a social media post. I want you to make a video. I want you to do, whatever. Like sometimes they want everything, right? They want a lot of things, but make sure it sounds nice enough where you're saying, okay, here are the things we'd like you to do. And, we're going to need you to do this with tracking codes. And here's what we're going to ask you to do. And we're also going to give you an influencer brief where we're going to let you know what has to be said in a certain way because of the Federal Trade Commission. And just like upfront, just let them know what the offer is and then make sure they understand the budget. And then if you know that this person might be somebody that's a reach, make sure you have a little bit more money in your pocket to work with them, if that's the case. And I feel like a lot of brands, they always feel like it's like a one-way street, like, oh, this is what we're gonna give you and that's it, right? Well, guess what? A lot of people will walk away because they don't need to do this if there's like 20 people who are going to want to do a deal. I mean, it's very time consuming. And that's the other thing that brands don't understand is how time consuming it is to create content, and also it is actually really great for the brand when they get this type of content because it's cheaper for them to get it from an influencer with a tribe than for them to go hire a graphic designer and a copywriter and somebody who can do Facebook ads and Google ads to help them pump this stuff out, and also after you have this piece of content, you can use it. So it's really a lot of work is what I'm saying.
Totally. So on the content piece, what I'd love to know is how much, as the online course creator, how much content are we giving that influencer to make it as easy as possible for them? Because I'm sure we're not just leaving it all up to them to create the content. How much are we providing them with?
So you want to make sure you give them the content that you need them to convey to their audience, meaning if you have talking points that you usually use in the media, or if you have something if you have like an FDA approved product or clinically proven product where you have to say things a certain way, make sure they know what that content pieces are. So for example, like if your product can help with health and wellness, but it doesn't cure cancer, or if your product is great with giving you daily energy, but it's not like a caffeine pill, be very specific, because if you just tell them, this is what the product does, they'll go on and say certain things. Like they'll say, oh, I managed to like jump rope 45 minutes because, I've never had this much energy in my whole life. Like, it's not that kind of product, So you have to be really clear about how things are said and how they need to be said if you have that kind of product. Otherwise, if there's just some talking points like, oh, we want you to cover that this product is great for young teens and moms, and it's great for self-care, and we just want you to show your following how to use the product and help them understand that they need to try this new product. I mean, just kind of be specific like that. So it just depends on what your company is doing and what their goals are and what their roles are.
And what sort of lead-in time do we need to allow? If we know that we're going to do a launch, let's just say the 1st of June, just to make it nice and easy, how much time do we need to allow? Because there's a lot of research and there's a lot of negotiation happening here. Like you've already mentioned, influencers are very busy. I'm guessing it's not going to be a 24-hour negotiation. So, once we decide, well, this is when we're going to launch our product, when do we need to start looking at all of this?
Uh, 3 months. 3 months. It's about 12 weeks from beginning to end to find an influencer, rank an influencer, internally decide on what the bigger the company, the longer it takes. How about that? So
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
like
gonna
it.
tell you that. So if you need to go talk to your CMO and the CFO and the legal department and the science department about what this campaign is about and make everybody sign on, I would suggest you do all of that before you even go out to the influencers. Because if you're let's just say you're an influencer that's pretty busy, right? I mean, I would say first internally, make sure in the brand that you go and speak to your CMO, find out what the budget is, find out, what the strategy is, or decide what the strategy is and make sure they're signed on. Figure out what all the things you want to do for this campaign, whether it's hashtags or anything else. And then from there, go to your legal department and hash out the contract. Make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the SOW, the statement of work, is going to be, and make sure that everybody is signed off on this template of a legal document. And then if there are things that need to be said that are clinically proven or FDA approved or whatever, make sure that the science department has signed off on this legal brief or this influencer brief that you're handing off to these people. So CMO, sign off, CFO, budget, so budget, strategy, then you got a legal document and possibly some content pieces that need to be approved internally and signed off by the marketing team. And then make sure that everybody on the creative team and wherever else are on board with the type of content they're going to be creating. Meaning, if you're going to have them create video or pictures or anything like that, is there a certain way that your graphic designer or your head of video wants them to hold the product or sit with the product? Do they want nothing behind them when they're shooting it? All those guidelines need to be laid out before you get this person on board. Because if they video and there's all kinds of stuff in the background and they didn't want that, or that label is blurry, I mean, you just wasted everybody's time.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of ducks there to put in a row. And I think that's the biggest takeaway there. This is something that you don't take on lightly. Think that I can just pull it together in a week. Like, it's not going to happen. But from the sounds of it, it's very lucrative and it's very worthwhile time investment if you do pull this off, which is awesome. Now, I believe you've got a freebie for the listeners on how to know things they need to know before working with an influencer. I'd love you to tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have a free guide, which is 5 things that you should do before working with an influencer. And you sign up for it and you basically get an email every single day. And it's a content piece that really just talks to you about what you should be doing before you get to working with an influencer, whether it is finding out information about them or figuring out what you're doing internally. So all the things we just covered that we were talking about, it's just 5 content pieces, and also addresses content in general and what the trends are. So worthwhile, and it goes along with my influencer marketing course that I'm launching.
Cool. And where can we get that?
So you can, should I give you a link and then you'll add it to your—
I'll be adding it to the show notes anyway. Yep.
Yep. And then they can also go to digitaleverything.consulting, and it's on the front page. It just says sign up for the free guide to learn more about 5 things you should do before hiring an influencer.
Perfect. Susana, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I think this is such a super interesting topic, and something, like you said, that we can all be using, which until we spoke, it's not something that I'd even thought about for business, but of course it makes sense. It's how Marie Forleo is doing her launch. So I don't know why it hadn't even occurred to me before. So thanks so much for sharing everything with us today. And I look forward to keeping in contact and possibly having you back on the show one day.
Yes, that would be great. I would love that.